And we
Ah, okay, wonderful. So let's get started. And welcome back, everyone, to the second talk in the Professional English Summit. And I am delighted to introduce you to Lindsay McMahon, who is also the co-host. I think you can see Lindsay. Lindsay is the CEO of All Ears English, and she's also the co-host of the All Ears English podcast. Now, the All Ears English podcast and the Business English podcast teach English communication and global business skills to 1.9 million followers on Apple and Spotify. These two podcasts are downloaded 4 million times every month, and they have been ranked as number one in the US education language courses. Lindsay, I'm delighted to welcome you to the summit.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. And before we get started, I would love to just say hello to our listeners, our students here today. It looks like in the chat we have Marek from Poland and Saba from Hungary. Who else is here? Could you introduce yourself in the chat and tell me where you're from? Does that sound good, Claire? Just to see who's here and just greet everyone. I love meeting students on Zoom. It is so wonderful. So, who else is here? Tell me your name and where you're from in the world. So, we've got Poland, we've got Hungary. Who else is here? All right, we have someone from Russia, Vadim from Russia, Mariana from Ukraine, and Apolik from Greece. Fantastic. And Sol from Ukraine, Hannah from China, and Petra from Italy. Wonderful. Then we have Ariane from Belgium. Hello. Great. Claire, it's great to know that we have a very international crowd today. Really glad to be here. So, shall I go ahead and get started with the presentation?
Yes, please do. And just to remind everyone, if you have questions for Lindsay, please write them in the chat, and Lindsay will then answer the questions. Over to you, Lindsay.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Claire. Excellent. So, again, thanks again for having me here, Claire. I'm super excited to be here. And today we're going to be talking about how to build key business relationships without perfect English. And I have without underlined because that is our emphasis today. No one here is perfect. But first, before I get started, I do want to give you a couple of fun facts about myself so you know who I am and how I teach English and what All Ears English is. So, I have been an ESL podcaster for 12 years. So, I launched All Ears English podcast back in 2013. And I think at that time there were just a few podcasts. Claire, maybe your podcast was around then. Is that right? No, not quite yet, but your podcast has been around quite a while. Isn't that right? Yes, yes. So, anyways, 2013, there were just a few ESL podcasts. No one knew what a podcast was. I have lived in Japan. I lived there for a year and a half in my 20s, and that informs a lot of my philosophy on teaching, on learning, and on human connection. And I'm also a proud dog mom of my dog who goes by the name of Kiefer. He's usually here in my office with me, but that is a photo of him. And I would like to start my presentation today with a story. So I'm going to take you back to the summer of 2007, quite a long time ago now. And during this summer, during this year, I was taking a full year to backpack all over South America. So I had lived in Uruguay for a month, Buenos Aires, Argentina for 3 months, Guatemala for 3 months. I was making my way through the continent of South America, and I had a single goal. My goal was to become conversationally fluent so that I could move back to the US and get a job working with immigrants in New York. That was my plan at the time. That was my dream, was to work with immigrant communities in New York City. And so I needed to get that done during the year. I needed to build Spanish fluency, and I was brand new in Spanish when I started traveling. So we were coming through the year, moving on with the year, and my Spanish level had reached a level of about intermediate, but I was starting to build momentum, right? I was getting stronger and stronger. I was starting to have conversations, and I was getting confident in those everyday conversations. But I did notice one thing that I think you all might notice too in English. I was starting to use the same vocabulary over and over and the same grammar. Where are you from? What's it like in New York? I was from New York. I had lived in New York. So what's it like in New York? Where have you traveled? Where are you traveling next? These were easy questions to answer. So I got into kind of a wheelhouse and I thought I was doing well in Spanish, right? So let's go straight into the moment this happened. We are on a beach in Santa Marta, Colombia. I'm 3 months into my trip. All right. And it is a warm evening in September, right? We're on the beach and I am sitting on this beach. I'm sitting around a campfire with native Spanish speakers. Now, these people that I'm hanging out with are local people. They're also backpackers and travelers from other Spanish speaking countries, from Spain. And I'm also there with my travel companion at the time, who was a Spanish woman from Madrid. And so it's 100% in Spanish. There are no native English speakers there. I am the only person in that group that speaks Spanish as a second language. But I felt good because, like I said, I had built momentum with my Spanish. So it started off very smooth. We're making introductions, people are friendly. But again, I'm using that same vocab, that same grammar in my wheelhouse. But it's good because I'm feeling connected, I'm feeling good. And people are even complimenting my Spanish, which was really cool. I was starting to hear these compliments and I was liking that. Then all of a sudden, something changes, right? All of a sudden, the topic turns to politics. Now the vibe changes. Okay. There was a clear before and after. People get excited. They start speaking over each other. They start to interrupt each other, right? They start speaking faster and then faster and even faster. They start using vocabulary that was not in my textbook. I had not learned that vocabulary. They use grammar forms that I recognized, but I hadn't learned them yet. They were using idioms, slangs, telling jokes, making stories, talking about current events. And all of a sudden, I was way outside. I was way over my head. Okay. And I think some of you are going to resonate with this feeling. I have a feeling that some of you have felt this before. I felt like I was losing control. So in this moment, I'm sitting here, I'm watching this happening, and I feel like I'm losing control of the situation. In my mind, I think, what are they saying? And do they know that I'm lost? Right? I was embarrassed about the fact that I was lost at that moment. Then someone says my name. Clearly, I heard my name. They ask me a question, and then everyone in the group looks directly at me. Everything stops and they look at me. Okay. I freeze, right? Like the ice on this tree. I freeze. And honestly, all I could do was give them a weird, confused look. That's all I could do. And then the worst part, the group erupts in laughter, right? Just laughter. They are actually laughing. They're laughing at me. They're laughing at the situation. I don't even know what they're laughing at because I don't know what they said. Okay. So naturally, my face goes bright red. I become super embarrassed. And in that moment, honestly, I felt alone. I felt embarrassed. I felt isolated, ashamed. And worst of all, I felt like a fraud. Why? Because at the beginning of this party, these same people had been giving me compliments, saying, wow, your Spanish is great. How did you learn? It's amazing. You can speak, you sound fluent. And now I'm a fraud because I couldn't even answer that question. And the whole conversation had stopped and they were looking at me. So the question, though, is what did I do next? Okay, here's the important thing. I moved back slightly from the circle. These are micro movements, but they're important. I moved back a few inches from the circle. I dropped eye contact with the people around the circle and I slumped my shoulders. I physically brought my shoulders in to kind of protect my body. This is sort of a natural human response, right? I was no longer expansive. So I want to ask your listeners a quick question. Have you ever been in a situation like this? And I would actually love to stop sharing for a second and poll the audience or have our listeners type in the chat. Have you ever been in a situation like this? It doesn't have to be at a campfire, but it could be at work. It could be at a lunch, a party, a community event. Okay, Apolloc says yes. Sol says yes. Oh my gosh, I'm getting a lot of yeses. Vadim says no. That's good. I love that. But many, many times Hannah says yeah, and Core says yes at work. And then Linnea says, "How do you know my feelings?" Because Linnea, I've been through this too, right? This is a human journey that we're having here when it comes to learning languages. I love that. Well, honestly, that was kind of my hunch that I had a feeling. Yeah. And Zia says, yes, in a work meeting. So embarrassing. And at work, it's even worse. Right? And that's what we're going to be talking about in just a minute. So, yes, we've all been through this situation. 99% of you, based on my polling, have been in a situation like this one. But here's what happened. Let's take a look at what happens in these moments. And you can think about your situation in that work meeting or that social scenario. I didn't understand their Spanish. Therefore, I broke the connection. Therefore, I lost an opportunity to build relationships. That is what happened. But here's the key question. Was it because of my Spanish? Right? Who thinks it was because of my Spanish? Go ahead and type in the chat box. Do you think it was because of my Spanish that I lost the connection? Go ahead and type yes or no. What do you think? Even though you know my answer. What do you think? No, 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 and no. That's right. It wasn't actually because of my Spanish. And what was it because of? Right. So let's move on. It was because of the way I reacted to my mistake. This is so important to get this out on the table. So let's imagine if I could go back to 2007, many years ago, and I had to have better skin at that time. It would be great. I could go back. What would I do if I could do it all over again? Right? What if I, again, in this alternate scenario, I didn't understand their Spanish again, but I did something different. My older self is wiser. I maintained the connection. I maintained the connection. Therefore, I had the opportunity to build relationships. Okay. So, what does that mean when I say I maintained the connection? What am I talking about here? What if I had kept the eye contact? I told you in my story that I dropped the eye contact, right? And I think probably many of you did that too. But eye contact is important for human connection. What if I had kept the eye contact? What if I had actually just laughed in that moment, laughed at myself? What if I could have taken myself less seriously? What if I hadn't backed away physically from the circle? What if I had asked them to actually rephrase, put the onus on them and ask them to rephrase their question? These are all things that I could have done, but instead I chose to take myself out of the game. I took myself out of the game. And this is so important to understand before we get further into the presentation, because a huge part of your success at work, your career success, is based on relationships, right? It's all about relationships when it comes to our career success. But I want you to know here and now, as we get started today, that you don't need to wait to be fluent. I think many of us feel like we're waiting for some magical day where we're going to be fluent. But how do we define fluency? When does that day come? We're going to keep pushing the goalpost forward for ourselves. And we're always going to say, I'm not ready yet. Right. But here's what I want you to know today. You can build those relationships now if you just shift your focus. And this is what we talk about on All Ears English. This is what we're all about. So I want you to entertain the idea today of changing your definition of success in English, right? Definition of what it would mean to go to work today and be successful, right? What would that actually mean? And here's the truth. The thing that we understand in our approach to learning English is that human beings are wired for connection. There are things that human beings need, and connection is one of the very important things that we need. Honestly, we've been sitting around campfires for thousands and thousands of years. We've been making eye contact, connecting with each other. And this is the reason we learn languages. It's not to be correct. So we need connection. But what happens is we get in our own way and we make it way more complicated than it actually has to be. All right. So at All Ears English, our motto, our slogan, and our trademark is connection, not perfection. And I want you to keep that phrase in mind as we go through today's presentation. This is very important to understand. You are learning English to connect with other human beings, unless you're a linguist, which is totally cool, or a grammarian or writing a dictionary. The reason you're learning is to connect, to ultimately have a happier, more successful life. So we're going to shift our focus. So let's get into some nuts and bolts of how we can actually do this. How can we build key business relationships without having perfect English? That is the premise. We believe that it is possible to do this. So how exactly can we do it? Again, like I said, we are going to have a dramatic shift in focus. So in today's presentation, I'm going to go ahead and show you 3 key strategies and some important vocabulary to build these business connections, not in the future when you're at a C1, C2 level. I'm talking about tomorrow when you go to work, or today, later today, when you sign on to your Zoom team meeting, to your daily stand-up meeting. This is what you should be focusing on now, not when your English is good enough. Okay. So we're going to talk about strategy number 1, which is to build your confidence with everyday interactions. The way I've set up today's presentation is a ladder. You're going to step up and up and up, and each step before it is going to build your confidence. All right. So your first step, you're going to build your confidence with everyday interactions. And I'll tell you what that means. Strategy number 2 is you're going to stretch your skills with gatekeepers and decision makers. Okay. This is your manager, your boss, the people that can say yes or no to you. Strategy 3 is you're going to be strategic about which relationships you choose to develop. And we're going to bring in an article from the Harvard Business Review where we can know what are those important relationships to develop. All right. And finally, we're going to learn vocabulary. This is really the how, right? When we talked on Claire's podcast, we talked about the why, and I'm going to give you the how. How do we actually do it? Sometimes it comes down to the words and phrases that we use. I believe that words have a lot of power. Okay. So you're not perfect and I'm not perfect. Let's type in the chat box right now before we get into the nuts and the bolts of today's presentation. Let's type in I'm not perfect. Go ahead and type that in. And I'm also not perfect. None of us are. Let's get that out there. I would just like to take a quick look. Yes, thank you, Clara, Vadim, Hannah. Excellent. And this is okay. And now that we have this out of the way, we have Apollik and Saba. We know this. We can move on and actually start to build the key strategic skills, know how to spend our time so that we can build the relationships and have a better career, right? And again, we're not perfect, and there are things that we can do today to succeed. So here is strategy 1. Go ahead and take out your pen and paper now that we know our philosophy. We're all on the same page. Strategy 1 is to build your confidence with everyday interactions. All right. So this is going to happen early in the day. So ask yourself early in the day, before you go to work or as you enter your workplace, who can you have a conversation with? Okay. It's best to do this early in the day because it gets our mind inclined in the positive direction, starting to build the confidence early. So what do I mean by who are we having a conversation with? This could be someone at the front desk. If you work in a physical office, as you walk in, there's someone maybe in the front office. You can have a conversation with this person. Maybe you stop in a coffee shop on your way to work, the barista, have a chat with that person. Maybe it's the doorman or the door person of your apartment building as you're leaving in the morning, or of your office building as you're entering and you're swiping your card. Who is that person that is there, might be available for a quick chat? And this is the way to build confidence. So in this presentation, I'm going to give you key connection skills, and then I'm going to give you the vocabulary. The key connection skill here is learn something about that person. And you're going to notice a recurring theme in all of my teaching today. And we'll get into it in a minute, but see if you can pick up on the patterns. So the key connection skill, learn something about them. So let's write down this key phrase that we can start using right away. What did you get up to this weekend? What did you get up to this weekend? Now, on All Ears English, we do what we call our signature role plays on our podcast, and our listeners love this. I have a feeling you all are going to love this too. I'm going to ask Claire if she can in, uh, take part in the role play with me. Claire, would you be able to take part in this role play with me?
I'd love to.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Well, let's set up the scenario first. So here we are walking into work. It's a Monday morning, and we're going to greet the front office person. Okay. So this is what it looks like. For example, are you ready, Claire?
I am.
All right, here we go. So, hi, Claire. What did you get up to this weekend?
Hi there. I went to my niece's college graduation, actually.
I didn't know that you had a niece. Are you close with her?
Oh, yeah, she's lovely. She's my sister's eldest daughter.
Wonderful, wonderful. And there we go. We have actually opened up a really nice conversation. And here's what I like about this phrase. I want you to pay attention to the grammar, the subtleties of what we're asking here. This is not asking, what did you do this weekend? That question is kind of boring. Okay. That question is kind of boring. We're asking, what did you get up to this weekend? The connotation of this is creative, it's fun, it's natural, it's a little less formal. There is a difference between what did you do this weekend and what did you get up to this weekend. It has a sense of camaraderie between you and the person you're asking this, because it also has a hint of mischief a little bit, if you want to interpret it that way. What did you get up to this weekend? Right. So this automatically brings us a lot closer by strategically choosing this instead of what did you do this weekend, which is much more textbook. This is going to get us on the way to connection faster. Okay. And let me just move my box here. Again, like I said, using get instead of do is strategic here. And there's a second strategy that we did, which is we escalated. So I went from asking, what did you get up to? And then I went to asking about your niece, Claire. Are you close with her? That is an escalation of connection, right? We're asking a deeper, more intimate question. And you can gauge this if the person is busy, maybe we don't go to this second question, right? But if they are available and open to connecting, we've just escalated and gotten closer to the person. And then the next time we might say, how's your niece doing, right? Something like that. So we can strategically use the questions that we form to build those connections faster. Okay, I'm going to move on now to strategy 1B. We're still in the realm of everyday interactions, but now we're going to talk about something that is a little higher stakes. So I told you this presentation is going to be a ladder. We're going to climb our way up of difficulty and intensity, maybe. The next step is our coworkers. So where is this going to happen? Maybe during your daily stand-up, right? I would actually like to ask the audience, how many of you participate in a daily stand-up? Let me know in the chat. How many of you participate in some kind of a check-in meeting where you're working on cross-functional teams and people are reporting on their progress, maybe in coding or design or UI, UX experience? Go ahead and type in the chat box, yes, I have daily stand-ups or other kinds of meetings that you have. All right, I'm waiting to hear from someone. Don't be shy. Don't be shy, everyone. Go ahead and let me know. Yes or no. I participate in a daily stand up. Rarely have meetings. I work alone. Okay, let's see, that's Claire. All right, Claire, you're working on your own. So Linya says, no, I don't. Yes. All right. Anyone else would like to go ahead and add in the chat box? Yes, I have daily meetings in my native language. Good. Marina, yes, good. So we're all having some kind of meeting. Hannah says, no, it depends. I have regular meetings with my managers, Gia says, and then someone else said time to time, from time to time. Okay. So this is an opportunity to get to know our coworkers, cross-functional teams. This could be online or it could be in person. And here is the key connection skill 1B. Give others the space to complete their thought. And here we're placing the focus not on ourselves. The focus is not about us. Am I speaking enough? Did I say that right? That is what the thinking that gets us locked, it gets us frozen. But instead, we are putting our attention to what is happening with that other person. Okay. So here's the key phrase. Let's give Claire, or let's give Lindsay some time to complete his or her thought. Let's give Claire some time to complete her thoughts. Okay. So, in this scenario, you're participating in a Zoom daily stand up. I'm going to assume we're working with a team across borders, across the world, and you're in that daily stand up meeting. Claire, would you indulge me one more time? We're actually going to have three voices here. We're going to have an interrupter, and then we'll have my voice and your voice. So, would you get us started here?
Yes, okay. So I'm going to read the top phrase. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes, correct.
Okay, right. So let's consider the customer experience on the homepage.
I actually think let's give Claire some time to complete her thoughts. Claire?
Thank you, Lindsay. So, as I was saying,
Good. Okay, excellent. So that is the idea. So here we're in a scenario and someone interrupts, right? Someone interrupts Claire. And what I'm suggesting to our students is that you all give Claire some time to complete her thoughts. Let's let that person speak. Okay. And what I like about this is it's important to know, at least in American business culture, I think in a lot of Western business culture, it is very common to talk over people. Okay. And I talk a lot with my students, my listeners on All Ears English, that they are kind of intimidated in that situation, afraid to speak, never have a chance to speak. But here I'm asking you to flip the script and help someone else. Okay. What this is going to do is it's going to build leadership presence for you. All right. Which is huge. And then, so you're not worrying about not speaking yourself. Instead, you're giving others the space to speak. And then we hope that that person will help you come in on the conversation at another time, maybe later in that meeting or another day. But you are being seen as a leader by just speaking up and respecting your colleagues. And of course, you're building those key relationships with your colleagues. So, as we round out strategy 1, this is the key takeaway. Relationships are built in the everyday, unremarkable moments. All right. And so keep in mind that every interaction that you have throughout the day can build your confidence. So do your best to get in a quick win early on in a relatively low stakes way, and then build up to connecting with coworkers using the phrases that I have taught. All right. How are we doing time wise here, Claire? I've got 2 more strategies. How are we doing?
so we're at the 30 minutes past the hour, so you have plenty more time to carry on
Okay.
speaking. I would love for you to share your strategies.
Okay, good. Okay. I want to make sure there's not a hard. Okay. All right. Here's strategy 2. Strategy 2 is we're going to stretch our skills with decision makers. And again, this is inviting you to change what you're focusing on, right? We're going to flip our script that's going on in our head. The script going on in my head is, when am I going to get that promotion? When am I going to get that raise? Everyone else gets those things and I don't, right? I want you to stop focusing on that. And I want you to shift your thinking. And I want you to think, how can I be helpful to my boss or my manager today? Right? The key connection here is make your manager's day or job easier. So I'm a manager, I'm a boss at All Ears English. I'm the owner of All Ears English. And so I cannot tell you how wonderful it is when an employee comes to me and says this. I'm sure you resonate with this too, Claire, and any of our listeners who are entrepreneurs or business owners, that is going to immediately build your value as an employee in the company, is when you ask this question. And here is how to ask this. So please write this down. Is there anything I can take off your plate? Is there anything I can take off your plate? Now, we're not talking about dining here, of course, right? But we're talking about a workload that for many bosses and managers is often insufferable. I know for me, my workload is incredibly huge. And when someone comes to me and says this, they add value, right? So in this scenario, you are chatting with your manager at the end of a board, let's say a meeting, a team meeting. So here we go, Claire. Let's dive in again.
Okay, right.
Yes.
It's looking like a busy week coming up with the conference, the sales meeting, and the presentation next Tuesday.
Oh, is there anything I can take off your plate this week?
Actually, yes, thank you for asking. Would you mind prepping the slides for the presentation?
Yeah, excellent. Excellent. So, obviously, don't say this unless you mean it and you have the ability to complete that task. That's an important thing to note. So, if you're already feeling overwhelmed, this is probably not the right move, but this would be a strategic move to build your relationship with your manager instead of thinking, when do I get my raise? When do I get my promotion? When do I get that big project? How can I help? How can I help? All right. So, we're really flipping the script on what we're normally thinking. And again, thinking about the construction of this phrase to take something off your plate, this is an idiom. And I like it because the connotation is not intrusive and it's not demanding. It's not saying, tell me what I can do for you. Tell me what I should do. Give me something to do. It's just saying, hey, is there anything I can do? No pressure. If, maybe you could come back to me later and tell me. It does show a sense of openness. So please write this one down and plan to use this next time you're at work in front of your manager. The key takeaway for this strategy: don't wait to be chosen. Don't wait to be picked for a project. Usually, the people that are chosen have already proven their value in other ways. So be proactive and find a way to add value. All right. I'm going to move into the last strategy, and this is to build key relationships. Now, this strategy is inspired by an article from the Harvard Business Review that was written by Jenny Fernandez and Louise Velasquez on June 4th, 2021, called Five Relationships You Need to Build a Successful Career. Please go ahead and read the article after we get off the call today so you can inform yourself a bit deeper. Basically, in the article, Velasquez and Fernandez argue that we can be strategic about the relationships that we build. We need a mentor, we need a sponsor, we need a partner, we need a competitor, and we need a mentee. And the mentee is what I want to focus on today. All right, we're going to focus on the mentee. So, of course, the mentee is someone who might be new in the company, right? And is just learning the ropes, and someone we can help. So when it comes to the mentee, instead of asking, who can help me, right? How can my mentor, my sponsor, my peer, how can those people help me? We're going to say, who can I help? Who can I help? Okay. So the mentee, by approaching this relationship, building and cultivating a relationship with a mentee at work, you're going to be seen as a leader. These are all tactics that make you seen as a leader. All right. You're going to teach what you've learned, which means you're going to practice your English in different ways, using different grammar forms, different vocabulary. So it's a way to actually practice. And you're going to focus on, again, what you can give, not what you can get, which is the key to success, I think, in general. And a key connection skill here is give light guidance. And I mean light guidance. And let's talk about the phrases that show that you're giving light guidance. Here's one phrase: I saw that you did X. Have you considered Y? I saw that you did X. Have you considered Y? And our second phrase is, what do you have in mind? And I love these phrases because, again, they're not intrusive. They're not telling the mentee what to do. Oh, you did this wrong. No, that's not what we're doing. We're letting them come to the conclusion themselves. So in this last scenario, you are going to run into a new hire in the company break room. So you've been working at your company for a few years and you run into a new hire. All right, Claire, can you help me out one more time here?
I'm here, yes.
All right. Here we go. So I saw that you ran into a problem with the promotion.
Yes, I knew price would be a customer objection, but I hadn't thought about delivery time.
Interesting. So what solutions do you have in mind?
I'm not sure.
Okay, have you considered running customer focus groups? Nice. So we see how both of these phrases, I saw that you did X, and what solutions do you have in mind, as well as have you considered, are a way of giving light guidance. And what I mean by light guidance is that it empowers your mentee to trust themselves. The last thing you want is to have a mentee that you tell them what to do for 3 years and then they have no ability to move up themselves because they've been relying on you, right? So empower them to trust themselves, to make their own decision, be a sounding board. You're not asking leading questions. Your questions are not leading questions. They're not driving to a certain solution. And you're letting them come to the answer themselves. Okay. So I hope you guys have all written that down, that advice, that guidance, written those phrases down. I'd like to wrap up our presentation by asking you really quick in the chat box, maybe if we have time, what do all of these strategies have in common? Does anyone want to take a guess about that? What do you think these strategies have in common? Someone said it is polite. All right. Yes, they are polite for sure. What else? Is there anything else that all of these strategies today have in common? Putting others first. I love that answer. Connection. Someone said, I also love that answer. Diminish depression. I don't understand that answer, but we'll keep going. They're all encouraging open dialogue and connection. They're all useful. Well, I'm glad you think they're useful. Good answers. Good answers, everyone. Let's come back to what the answer is, right? The answer is, so they all give, right? Essentially, hold on one second. Let me move this. They let you, hold on. We're in the wrong place. There we go. So you're able to get to know someone that you see every day. Again, these are the strategies that we shared. You're getting to know someone that you see every day. You're giving your coworkers space to speak. You're making your manager's job easier. You're giving light guidance. They're all about the other person, right? And I think some people did say that in the chat box. They're all about the other person. We're changing the script. The strategies help you stop feeling frozen or embarrassed. Why? Because you're focusing on the other person. That is the brilliance here. So this is a call to action, right? I'm calling you to action to shift your mindset away from your mistakes and toward the people in your professional life. It might sound like a small thing, but it's actually a very fundamental change that I'm asking you to make in your thinking so that you start to add value, you start to build relationships, and you're doing it by using strategic vocabulary choices that make sense and build the relationships. And here's the final thought that I want you to ponder for a minute as we finish up today. In my opinion, in my experience, it's literally impossible to be stuck in perfectionism and to focus on others at the same time. So you have to make a choice, right? It's impossible. It's like you cannot, your brain is too busy focusing on other people to be self-conscious, to be a perfectionist, to critique the mistake you just heard yourself make. So I want you to go and test this out for yourself. Try it for a day. Try thinking about the other person and see if your brain has time to get frozen, to get embarrassed, to get ashamed, to feel isolated like I did at that campfire. See if your brain has time. I want you to choose to focus on connection, to build those key business relationships. And if we do that, things are going to flow from there. Okay. So I would be happy to take questions at this point. I do want to let you all know that we do have an English level quiz over at allearsenglish.com/fluency score. And if you're interested in podcasting, you can always check out our podcast. That is the All Ears English podcast, where we bring every episode of the show back to human connection. Okay. So I will just go ahead and stop sharing. This actually went a little longer than I expected, Claire, but that's okay. So I would be happy to answer any questions that come up. All right. You're on mute, Claire.
Let me
Yep.
unmute myself. Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was absolutely amazing. And while we're waiting for any questions that you have for Lindsay, I just want to say I've put the link in to the fluency score, allearsenglish.com/fluency score. Please do check out Lindsay's podcast if you haven't already heard them. And we're waiting for any questions. But before we get any questions, Lindsay, I just wanted to say these strategies are amazing. And I love the fact that they focus on other people. But the interesting thing, I don't know if other people noticed it, when we think about getting ahead in our careers, we're always looking upwards, we're always looking to our boss. But as Lindsay
Yes.
says, it's not just about our bosses, it's about helping other people in our organizations, people who have just started. How can you help the new hire, the new person? How can you be pleasant and polite to the people around you, the people at the front desk? Every interaction is
Yes.
golden. So when we
Yes.
look about getting, look for getting ahead in our careers, it's not just upwards, it's all directions, and those
Yes.
interactions are going to make our day richer in terms
Yes.
of English. Really
Hmm.
super
Yeah.
points, Lindsay. Thank you so much. And I love the thing that you said also about not waiting to become fluent, because it's
Yes.
now that we
Yes.
start, isn't it?
Yes. Yes.
Abs
Yes.
we
You
get
got
very
it.
excited
Exactly.
about this, Lindsay. Right. Has anybody got any questions? So I've got comments like useful, um, how to implement these strategies in daily lives from Brahim. So that's the
Yeah.
first question, Lindsay. How can you
Yeah.
implement these in daily
I
life?
yeah, I mean this is it, right? So it starts with the mindset shift, which is why I told that story about the campfire. And so what you're doing is you're catching, so the first thing you can do is notice your reactions when you make a mistake. What are you doing? Are you dropping your eye contact? Are you caving in your shoulders? I'm not talking about huge reactions, right? These are very subtle micro movements, but as human beings, we read cues. And that person in front of you reads the cue, you make the mistake, you drop the eye contact, they see that you've taken yourself out of the game. You've taken yourself out of the connection. So that would be the first step. It actually starts more with your bodily chemistry, your body chemistry, and your own reactions when you hear a mistake. And then once you flip that script and you say, no, I made that mistake, but I'm going to maintain eye contact. I'm going to make a joke about my mistake, or I'm going to move on like it's irrelevant. It's a little fly buzzing in my ear. It's irrelevant. Okay. Then we can move up to implementing these strategies in the workplace strategically by just using them. I mean, this is the way, right? I think many of us have been sitting back and, again, like we said, waiting to be fluent, but you have the phrases now. There's nothing stopping you from tomorrow starting to use them. Okay. I mean, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely. Yes, we do have everything we need.
Mm-hmm.
Your English is good enough, but it's the
Yes.
reactions. That's lovely advice, Lindsay. And I have another question
Mm-hmm.
from Zami, and also a question also from Vadim. So
Yes.
Zami's question is, I currently have a communication problem with my manager, as it seems we
Mm.
don't get along well on a personal level. How can
Mm.
I build a more healthy and professional relationship?
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? I mean, we don't need to be best friends with our manager, and we probably shouldn't be, right? The relationship matters, but I think you can come back to focusing on, again, like I said, how you can take work off their plate, how you can help. And then ultimately, if you need to make a career transition, move to a different team, or potentially move into that leadership situation where that person is no longer your manager, but you do need to focus on what can I do to help the business and what can I do to kind of take work off that person's plate. And that will ultimately get you away from that situation of maybe working with that manager. But we don't need to be best friends with our managers. We just need to serve the company, right? Yes.
Thank you very much, Sammy. That advice was for you. Okay. Um, Lovely. And a comment from Vadim. We
Mm-hmm.
all live in
Yeah.
non-English speaking countries.
Yes. Sure. Yeah, of course. And many of our listeners do, right? And we provide this kind of advice because we're preparing to be in the moment. Maybe one day you'll be living in an English speaking country. Hopefully one day you'll be working in English, maybe remotely. I know, many of our listeners in All Ears English are working with an international company and they're utilizing English on Zoom through their Zoom meetings, their Teams, Microsoft Teams, Zoom, Google Hangouts, Slack. These skills are implementable online too, right? These are not just meant to be in person. there is an equivalent, the first skill, when I talked about building that, early momentum conversation, you'll have to be a little bit creative there. Maybe your version of that is that you hop on with a tutor for 15 minutes before in the morning to start your day off right and ask them about how they're doing, ask them about their lives. Rather than expecting the tutor to guide everything, you're trying to find out about them, learning more about their lives. So you kind of have to implement these strategies and customize them to your lifestyle and where you're living and working. Okay.
Lovely. I think yes, the point is that even online we can interact in English. So it's
Sure.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, lovely. Right. Do you have time for another question, Lindsay?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you. And this one is from Hannah.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation. It was really great. I have a question about communication in multicultural teams. Since none of
Yes.
us are native English speakers, I've noticed that even when I feel confident speaking, some of my co-workers seem hesitant. I
Mm-hmm.
think they're worried about accidentally offending me because of cultural differences, or they might
Mm.
feel insecure about their language skills. How can I help them feel more comfortable and encourage open communication?
Yeah, this is so good, Hannah. I'm really glad that you're thinking about multicultural work, teams. This is actually what I studied in my graduate program, communicating across cultures. So this sounds like to me, Hannah, the perfect invitation for you to utilize the first strategy, strategy 1B, which is giving your teammates space and time to speak, and giving them a platform, elevating them. So you can come up with your teacher or however you like to study English, 3 or 4 other phrases to elevate them and give them the space. The other thing you could do is give them some space to voice their contributions before the meeting so they might feel more confident speaking up and speaking out at the meeting. But I think as much as you can give them a platform to uh, have a voice, have space to speak, and maybe practice what they want to say, that would help to bring them out because they have valuable contributions, right, Hannah? I mean, they have things to say that are important to your company. Make sure they know that too. Make sure they know that your company needs that expertise. So it's becoming a leader, right? You are going to want to become a leader for them to invite them to contribute. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right.
Got two thumbs up.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
interesting, the concept of multicultural
Yeah.
teams. And I've been recommended a book actually about multicultural teams, and it's called The Culture Map. I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. 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 It's a
Yeah,
good
I'm just gonna
one.
yeah, I'm just gonna type that in the chat for people if they want to find out more
Yeah.
about it. And it looks about how we communicate across cultures,
Yeah.
how various yeah, depending on where you're from, you might have different management techniques, different communication.
Yes.
You've got it, Hannah. I can see you've got it.
Oh, she's got it. I love it. Hannah, you are right in there. I mean, one thing to keep in mind is that it's hard, right? Because you have people from all different cultures, and to them, it might be considered a sign of politeness and deference to not speak. Whereas in a Western business context, if you don't speak up, that will actually lower your status a little bit in the eyes of your manager, your boss, your coworkers. So, one thing you could do is facilitate a conversation, Hannah, with your coworkers around cultural norms about participating in those meetings. Like, what did people learn in their culture about what is polite? What should one do? Should that person be waiting for the manager to speak? That might be happening. And if everyone understands that, that could start to get at the problem too. Okay. Yeah.
I love that. That's so
Mm.
open, isn't it? Having those
Yeah.
conversations is really lovely, open management. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Lovely. Do we have any more questions? Any comments, questions, anything you'd like to ask Lindsay while she is here and with us? So, as we say, to pick her brains. If there's anything else that you'd like to ask? Okay, I can't see anything. So I would just like to say, Lindsay, thank you so much for sharing those strategies. Thank you so much for actually widening the discussion about
Mhm.
what it means to be successful in our careers. And as you keep saying, it's not about us, it's about other people. I've
Yes,
got lots of thank yous, many thanks. Yes, thank you so much, Lindsay. It was so, so informative. And
absolutely.
thank you everyone also who's come along. We also start again tomorrow at 10 a.m. We have a talk at 10 a.m. about meetings. And then at 2 p.m., we have another talk actually about presentations. And then finally, we have a talk about intercultural communication. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone again tomorrow. I will send you an email with all the links. Thank you so much. And yes, Lindsay, once again, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. It was wonderful.
Yes, thank you again, Claire, for having me. So lovely to meet you all and enjoy the rest of the summit. All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you
Okay.
so
Thank
much. Bye
you.
bye, everyone. Bye bye.
Bye. Bye, guys. Bye.